Hey guys, and welcome to the Garage Athlete Show. We are on episode 69, and we have an amazing guest for you guys today in Cecile. So, I've met Cecile through Rachel, so I'm going to hand over to her to do the introduction and for me to finish this meal so that I'm not eating all the way through the podcast. So, Rachel, if you want to take over.
Yeah, cheers, Don. So, you're going to meet the amazing Cecile Chariot today. We initially met when I was living in London through Strong Woman, and she was one of the first people that I actually met who was training in that way in a class in a gym that we both loved, and sort of inspired me to get into training that side of things a little bit more. And this was even when I was injured as well. Cecile is on Instagram. She is Cecile Sports Therapy and works out of a clinic in London in Clapham. She also does some of her own freelance work. So I sound like I'm pimping her out here, but she's amazing. So if you're in London, she is someone definitely worth looking up. We're going to touch today, I'm going to let Cecile sort of introduce herself in a moment, but we're going to touch on sort of common niggles that she sees people going back into clinic for, ways in which you could kind of help yourself really, in terms of how you approach either your training, your recovery, that side of things. And then we're also going to touch on sort of managing training and life, living with lupus as well, because Cecile is someone who is very strong physically, but also very strong mentally. So I'm going to be quiet now and just hand over to Cecile, who's just going to tell us a little bit more about herself, what got her into the career, and sort of what she would sort of start to advise people on a little bit more, because we're still at the start of the new year, in terms of maybe starting a new training plan or getting into training a little bit more seriously with sort of niggles or injury considerations in play. So over to you, Cecile.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you for the introduction. So I moved from France in 2006. And after learning English, I thought I'll go to uni and do some sports rehab, and really liked the manual aspect of sports rehab. So moved into more soft tissue work after I graduated, after my degree. And in my first year of my degree, we trained as PT. We trained with the NASM. So that was part of the course. That's when I discovered the gym, actually. Before that, I was mainly an endurance athlete. I'd done ballet for 10 years and I'd done inline skating since the age of 15, really. So discovered weightlifting. Didn't think much of it, I must say. I just thought, okay, cool, get stronger, move on. And and then did more courses through looking after clients, and realized that there was a strong correlation between strength, weaknesses, imbalances, posture, and pain. So just developed more in that area of like exercise selection and what can we do with everyday's athletes, let's call them. So people, I think the majority of my work is with people who have a sedentary 9 to 5. So I would say office worker, but realistically that's more like living room office work at the minute. So it's become even more sedentary than it was already 2 years ago. And working in Clapham Common, everybody's very active. So the majority of my patients are very active, which means they go to the gym, they run, they cycle, they CrossFit, they powerlift. So I would say that the majority of people I look after now, very sedentary and very active at the same time, which is kind of part of the problem as well, between one extreme to the other.
Like me, to be honest, as an online coach.
It's
spend all day in front of my laptop and then go and train really hard for an hour and a half, and then go back and sit on my laptop for another couple of hours.
I mean, I was already having a problem about that kind of behavior 2 years ago, and then COVID came, and I was like, I'm not quite sure what to say anymore, because apart from telling you to go to the fridge, to the bedroom, to the back room, to the restroom, to the living room, to the fridge and back again, I'm not quite sure how to increase your step count. I'm like, can you go to the fridge more? Actually, let me think
Can I
this
go to the
through.
fridge more
Maybe
without
not.
eating anything? That's the big one.
So yeah, I would say that's the majority of it. And then yeah, just going to training through the gym where I met Rachel. That was where I discovered Strong Woman, and where I just entered a few local competitions, and I've been doing them since. So nothing too high level, purely because at the back of my mind there is, in Strong Women in particular and Strongman, there is still a high risk of injury. And I work in a very active job where I love what I do, and I'm careful about what I do so that I do not risk major injury, which would stop me from working. At the end of the day, I'm not much of a risk taker in that way, and I'd rather keep my job and do what I do than pushing too hard in training, because I'm aware of the consequences of pushing very hard in training. So
I think that's a really good thing to pick up on then, because we'll often hear about people sort of starting training, pushing themselves too hard, can't recover from it, don't really know where to go. And it's people finding that sweet spot, that middle ground that allows them to have quality of life outside of the gym. So what they do in training enhances that. And it's not the be all and end all. And at the end of the day, we're not all athletes. And you can't have the mind of an athlete because you have a job to hold down, you've got a family, you've got a very different life. So it's kind of finding what your recoverability looks like, and that does change as you get older, and it changes depending on stress that's going on, environmental stress, home life stress. And then it changed as well when COVID hits, because that's just an amalgamation of shit, let's be honest, just everything that people really struggle to mitigate, because it's a lot of things that are outside of our control, which also, as you know, manifest as stress. And you very much see it in your clients' and patients' bodies, don't you, Cecile?
Yeah. It's just my patient will relate to me saying this if they hear the podcast. Is the saying you have in this country, which we don't really use so much in France, which kind of baffles me, of people coming in pain to see me and they're like, I'm just getting old. I'm like, well, what do you mean you're getting old? Like, I'm getting any younger? Is that what you're saying? Like, I just, as far as excuses go, that one doesn't cut it for me. Because, so I try to explain to people that as we get older, and I will have said that to literally everybody I look after, as we get older, we just can't treat our bodies like shit. At the end of the day, they're going to be consequences. When you're 20, you want to drink all night, you want to stop sleeping, you will recover in 2 days. When you're 30, 40, 50, yeah, you're not gonna, no. And so I look after the body the same way, meaning that as we get older, we have to balance stress and recovery in a much more clever way than we do at the moment. And because in London and life in London and COVID, stress has gone up drastically, suddenly people are in more pain. And I'm not saying that it's soft tissue problems. I'm saying that the management of stresses is not good enough for the body to get away with you tying your shoelace. So yes, you could have tension in your body, but at the end of the day, it's kind of recovery and stress management is more important if you're trying to get away with back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain. If you just keep pushing your body and thinking that you can run a marathon because you did it 20 years ago and you don't need to train and you don't need massage and you don't need anything to get away with it, then no, it's not going to happen. So that's kind of how I remind people that it's not that they're not able to do what they want to do, but they have to be more mindful about how they do it instead of throwing themselves into it like they did when they were 18, 19, 20, which was fine at that point. Yeah. It's not so fine later.
It's a case of training smarter rather than harder. And a lot of people forget that if they've been out of exercise for a number of years and they kind of go back into it, like, as you said, when you're 17 to 21, you can train however you want, eat whatever you want, and you still kind of get results. Whereas, as you said, as you get older, life happens, stress happens, you're probably got more responsibilities at work, you've got to juggle like a family life, etc. Like, learning how to juggle all these things and then not overcommit yourself, that's a lot harder than people think. People think they can just go to bigger, faster, stronger, or go and do 5x5 or whatever the latest like fad program is, and they can just follow this program out of a book and it's going to work for them. But adapting it, as you said, looking after getting soft tissue therapy, thinking about recovery, so how much are you sleeping, what's your water intake like all those factors are a lot more important, especially as we age.
Yeah.
The one thing I really love about Cecile is she gets away with saying things that we wouldn't. And I don't know if it's the French accent or just her, but I've been to see her several times when I was in London, and, you know, she'll put you in your place, but it's with love. Let's put it that way. It's said with
when
a
it's
lot
in a
of
French
love,
accent, it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that, but I'm going to.
Yeah, you're like, I'm offended, but I can't let you see it because then you'll, what's going to happen? I don't know. So yeah, she gets away with a lot, but what I really like is how she manages people, and it's supportive. It's like supportive criticism, because it's a case of delivering people what they don't want to hear, but they need to hear from someone, especially with a paid service, because if everyone was fine, everyone didn't need this level of sort of recovery support, Cecile's job wouldn't exist. So by proxy, it's there for a reason, and it's just using it sort of as and when you need to go. And it's not the buy-in of saying, I need to see you once a week, every week for this reason. It's a case of, I'm trying to help you manage yourself, your workload, your stress, your life, because I want my work to be more beneficial. Because if you're not reducing the stresses on the body, then it doesn't matter how much soft tissue or manual therapy you get, it's not going to go anywhere, because you're fighting against your body's reactions, your systems. But what I'd really like Cecile to kind of touch on here is like what the difference is, because a lot of people don't know what the difference is between your role and a physiotherapist, as in, why would people need to come and see you rather than see a physiotherapist, and sort of what do you treat in a different way?
Oh, they're completely different. So physios, osteos, and chiros are medically trained. They've done a master level. They're completely differently qualified, and they can assess and they can diagnose a problem. So if you've got an acute injury in particular, I would go and see a physio, a chiro. Anything that's neurological, pains and needles, numbness, any sharp pain, any new issues, or anything where you've sprained your ankle, you've managed to mess up your shoulder. These are the people I would want to see first, especially as like a diagnostic tool to check whether or not you might need a referral for a scan or any further assessment. And then I tend to take it over after. So in the chiropractic clinic in Clapham, basically, because the chiropractor, once they've run through their full assessment, diagnostic, then I know what I'm looking at and I know what I'm looking for, and then I take over. So I allow people to keep on top. I can't really say I would even ease a lot of the tension they currently have, but what my function is, a lot of people forget that soft tissue work is more preventative than it is trying to pick you up after an injury. I'm here to keep you as close as possible to where you are at the minute, to avoid in a few months, years time, something going worse than it could be at the minute. Because I cannot tell people I will get rid, which is kind of an idea that they have, no question from where. You can't get rid of tension. Tension is there for a reason. Pain is there for a reason. There is a purpose to it. For me, pain, discomfort, tension, tightness is all more or less the same thing. And it's usually, I see it as a sign, and I try to explain it that way. Instead of being something that we try to eliminate, I would look at it as a warning light of your body telling you something is either gone wrong, is about to go wrong, or something you're doing is just not the way it should be right now. And that's how I look at tension, in any of that, any complaints I get. I tend to look at it at, what is it that you're doing that could trigger the alarm to ring somewhere in your body for you to come and see me. So
when you get somebody, so as you said, right, somebody's in pain, they've gone to a physio, the physio's told them X, Y, Z is wrong. They'd then come to yourself. Like, what would be the sort of first thing that you would do? Obviously, they've had an assessment kind of like with the physio. Say it's their shoulder, they've got pain in their shoulder. The physio's said X, Y, Z wrong. Like, what could they expect from somebody like yourself?
I mean, I would likely have a chat with a physio because physiotherapists, hopefully, some of them are quite good with giving exercises. So I would want to know what their ideas are. Then I just ask a lot of questions. What's good within the job I do as well is that I have the time, and once they're with me, like I will ask questions. So shoulder pain, for example, I see a lot in my power lifters, and a lot of the reason into it will be that, which sounds silly, but it's a small thing because I train. I'm aware of what that means. And for example, if they're going to be doing a reverse grip on the deadlift and then they're going to go bench, okay, that's great. So reverse grip, and then we've got one shoulder going one thing and the other shoulder doing something else, and then they come to see me with shoulder pain. I'm like, well, yes. If you're thinking that you can bench, but all you do reverse grip is one side the other, eventually over time, there's going to be a bit of an imbalance. And therefore, when you bring your grip back to where you want it for bench, something's going to get sticky eventually. So once I know what they have, so it could be anything, especially the shoulder. The shoulder is a tricky one, I must say. It's probably one of the hardest joint to work with, especially with athletes like powerlifters or crossfitters, purely because there's a lot of bashing around into the structure. And I see it as like, it's a very mobile joint rather than a stable joint. And we either underdo it or overdo it. So I try to rectify the balance. So if they have like a strong muscular structure around it, perhaps there's a bit of imbalance between the strongest of the muscles they're using and the weakest part. So I would want a bit of both. So I would want to release, and then I would want to strengthen, especially like shoulders being a mobile joint. We need it to be stable. So if they come and the background is CrossFit, and they do a lot of handstands, pull-ups, snatching, whatever on their hands, keeping pull-ups, that's a lot of stress on a structure that is designed for mobility, but needs to be stable. And then, if they tell me then the rest of their life is sitting in front of the computer, I know we're going to have problems. So I question a lot. I will find out exactly what stresses are on the structure, and then it's just as much as a release of tightness. Like I'm all for releasing tension, not if we're not strengthening the rest of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think the good thing about Cecile is as well, obviously, with training strong women, generally strength training in the gym, working with other coaches herself as well, you get to learn a lot about your own body, but also it allows you to treat in a sort of with a mindful eye of, you understand the different stresses that are being put on the different structures in the body. So very often you could go to physio or even someone who does sports therapy or sports massage, and because they don't train, they don't have that lived experience and understanding of what it's like to need to manage these things. So we've discussed before that you wouldn't choose to work with a coach who doesn't train in the discipline that you want to be coached within, because their lived knowledge and lived experience isn't going to be there. So it's not going to provide sort of that deeper service level, because you can only read so much from books and studies. You need to have that lived experience yourself to know kind of how to navigate things. And even just being around other people training and awareness of other injuries, or like when we're in the gym, like you'll always be scanning around, and it's not watching people's form, it's seeing how their bodies are moving, because everybody moves in a very different way. And you pick up a lot of different things about like, how are they getting away with that? How can they manage that? And it just gives you clues as to sort of how to approach your own training, but also for Cecile, I'd imagine as well, like how she treats people.
I think it's interesting what you said there about like, because Cecile, because you train, as you said, like, I don't know how many times you've had it. Well, you said you're experiencing it firsthand at the moment, Rachel, when you go like to a GP, or you go to somebody who clearly doesn't train themselves and hasn't got a lot of experience of dealing with like sports injuries. You go to them, you say, this hurts. They'll say, right, rest it and take some ibuprofen. and that's it. Like, to get a referral like through the NHS, even just to go and see a physio to diagnose you properly, is an absolute fight. So I think that's why a lot of people within the group then go to the group to go, I've got this problem, because if they just went to their normal GP, they know that they'd just get fobbed off. So I think it's one of those things where I think there needs to be more. As Cecile said earlier, like, this generation, this population now is the most active sedentary population like ever. We don't move apart from when we're in the gym training hard, which is bringing a whole different set of injuries and like problems and chronic issues that are happening over time, whether it's because people are training with poor form, whether it's because they are suffering with chronic things from being sat kind of like all day. I don't think there's enough education around just like within general medicine about, right, okay, I don't know enough about this. Maybe I should send them to somebody who's a specialist rather than just take some rest and have some ibuprofen and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it is difficult though, for their defense, I think, because having thought about it long enough, if you look at the medical training that they go through, they just can't cover it. At the end of the day, they have to learn so much. It's the same when I have this discussion with my friends who work as nutritional therapists. It's the same thing. They can't. There's just too much to know. And they would need to do, it's more for specialist people like us to try and come in and actually, we then get referral from the GPs and stuff. But it would be the same for me. They just can't cover it. They don't have physiotherapists when they work for the NHS. They have so much to learn. There is no way they would, on top of it. They might be specialists though. They might actually, a lot of people I know will be, let's say, they'll be a physio and they specialize in a particular joint because they have done further studies for that, because they are interested into it. The same as I like training and I'm interested into it. It's what I do in my spare time. But some of my friends who do the same job I do will be interested in various different things. And realistically, if I think their way of, because I'm very heavy hands-on work, that's what I like to do. That's what I'm good at. But automatically, that means that we will refer between therapists to each other. If we think that our patient might not benefit from our work, then I'll just refer out.
I think that's the beauty of where you work, and not working alone. You do have kind of your own in-house referral network there. But just going off what you'd said before, when we're talking about sort of the preventative rehabilitation side of things, I think sort of when we think about people getting referrals through the NHS, like, we need to appreciate that we're very fortunate to have this service as a free service within the country that we live in. And if we lived elsewhere, this would be something we'd have to pay for, which by proxy would kind of force us into a corner of thinking a bit more about what we do, because there's a cost involved in it potentially if we don't do things which are in our best interest. So if that perspective and view is put onto sort of treatment here, it's a case of, well, when I do something, there's going to be a risk involved in it. If I don't manage or mitigate that risk, or if there's an accident, I need to be prepared to take accountability for it. And by that point, I seek out somebody who can best support me with it. So it's not necessarily going down the NHS route for a referral to start with, because if you've done that and you've got nowhere in the past, you're literally going down the same route with a level of expectation that was there before, and it's not going to get resolved. Like, it doesn't sound so good, but if I word it in this way, like, you've got yourself into this mess, you need to support yourself to get out of it, but not in sort of that type of way, but just as sort of phraseology there. And
as you said, it's about taking responsibility, isn't it? At the end of the day, if you're choosing to do what you're choosing to do, like when we train, it has a cost associated. Like, whether you're at a gym, whether you're buying home equipment, like doing a sport or an activity is a choice. If you have then made an issue for yourself because, again, you haven't done the self-care of that, maybe it's time you take responsibility and go to somebody who's an expert in that area.
Yeah, like there's certain professions, I can't think off the top of my head, where you kind of need to sign a waiver that you don't engage in certain types of sports because of the risk involved in it. I can't remember what it was, but it's like sports like skiing, things like that, where there's a high injury rate. Cecile will probably know what I'm talking about there, because at the end of the day, you're choosing to do something outside of your workplace, but you'd expect to be supported with sick pay for an activity which you've chosen to do in your free time, which had sort of a heavy cost associated with it if something did potentially go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of, again, I think that's where, for me, it's where the tough love comes in. I'm more than happy to help, but I have to know that people are willing to help themselves, because coming to see me and expecting me, and it does happen once in a while, which is very irritating. When I have one person that comes in, I see them once and they come back 3 years later and they're like, oh yeah, I only needed you once and everything was perfect after. I'm like, that's weird. But it's the exception.
Then why are you back?
Yeah, all right. Well, that's weird. So okay, cool. And there's a reason why we got to where we are. I'm more than happy to help with changes or advice or whatever is needed on that day at that time, as long as I know the other person is then willing to do some of the work. Because I know it's terribly boring. Nobody wants to do the aftercare, the pre-care, the warms up. No one wants to do it. I don't want to do it. I still have to do it. So I get it. I get it. You know, today we want things now. Well, actually, no, we wanted them yesterday. So we want to be pain-free and we want to have done everything already. It's hard. It's kind of like I need them to be realistic and be patient. And coming from me, who's the least patient person I know, is difficult. So I get it. I'm like, I know. I'm not saying you're going to be better tomorrow, and it will take some work and it will take a bit of time, but you can get there. I'm trying to stay optimistic, because the worst that can happen is people thinking that whatever this injury is like I said earlier, old age, or we just, it is what it is. I'm like, well, that's not helpful, is it? So if we have the stress levels going up, we're not going to get better. So it's trying to I use humor as much as I can. So yeah, it's kind of taking responsibility while accepting the fact that there are things we're going to need to work together and things they need to do to prepare themselves better.
I think that's a big sort of the therapy side of your role, because there is a lot of therapy, and a lot of that comes with helping people understand their emotions around the pain or the problems they've got, and also helping them understand the role that they have to play in that as well. You aren't there as a fixer, and I think that's the biggest thing we need as a society to move away from. The medical world doesn't exist there to fix us, and it's how we frame that in our minds of we can get away with doing this because someone else will sort it out. And it's very much not that, and that comes to sort of any aspect of life: money, relationships, your body. Like, you are the only person who has complete control over that, and you need with that takes some responsibility and accountability. So that's where very much your therapy side of things comes in, because it's the language and the empowerment behind what you do and what you offer, but also the relationship in sort of putting the onus onto that person. Because yes, you are there and you get paid to do that job, but you're not getting any job satisfaction out of it. And I know you as a person to know this. Like, if the person in front of you isn't putting in what they need to, your frustrations level rise, because you want it, you want the recovery more than that they are showing you that they want it as well.
Yeah, I always use, and now that I've had injuries, I use myself as an example, is the fact that, for example, I'm very strict, as best as I can be, with warming up. I do a lot of certain mobility drills. If I'm about to squat and my ankle are stiff, I'm not going to squat very well. If my hips are not moving, I'm not going to squat very well. If I'm trying to press and my lats, my shoulders are not warmed up, it's not going to be a great session. When I tore my calf on the tire flips and my calf just went, I always tell them, imagine you're in that situation and then you get to the other side of an injury. Which position do you think you want to be in? Would you want to be that person that's like, if I had done this, maybe I could have avoided an injury. No, that's in my case, I looked at it backwards and I went, well, I did everything I could. I always been very strict about looking after myself, warming up, that it happened. But the reaction from an emotional hormonal stress level at that point is very different for recovery. So I try to tell them that they do all of these things to try and prevent things happening. And I'm not saying they're never going to happen. They might pull their back out, I don't know, or their shoulder or their neck, but while they are recovering from an injury is whether or not they've done the work they could have done to help themselves to avoid those things in the first place, or they done none of it and now, well, they just have to stop training for a while until they get better. So I try to see down the line of I'd rather them looking after the niggles now than coming to see me when they've done something that serious that I'm going to have to tell them to stop training, which for a lot of people, training, running, the gym or CrossFit is very much a mental health than it is a physical one. And I don't want them stopping. So I don't want to be that person that's like, well, it looks like you're going to have to stop for a while. So yeah, that's not good for anybody's mental health. So yeah, so that's where I come in. I try to foresee things that could happen down the line because I've seen it in maybe other people or in myself, and try to say, we could do something about this now. Something could still go wrong later, but at least we've done everything we could to try and keep you healthy. That's pretty much what I do. On that
point, what is something that the average, as you said, everyday athlete / weekend warrior, they are in a fairly sedentary job, 9 till 5, but they train in their home gym. They either do like CrossFit, powerlifting, bodybuilding, whatever it is. Like, what's, say, the 3 best things they can do to help prevent giving themselves issues? I know that's a very, very vague kind of like question, but we have a quite a variety of different athletes on who listen to this show.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to cover the basic. So for me, hydration, nutrition, sleep are non-negotiable. So if you've had a really, really bad night's sleep, I don't think training is lifting heavy deadlift is not going to help you. So maybe have a nap. Hydration, nutrition are for me, are very important. So that's like the basic. Like if that's covered, then you're going to be able to have fun and play with like a hobby or something else. After that, when they're very sedentary, and what I get a lot of my patients to do, because I'm not quite sure what else to do at that point apart from that, I force them to get up a lot throughout the day, because I've never been in an office work position, so I don't know how that's physiologically possible that you can sit for more than an hour without realizing you've sat for more than an hour. That in my brain, that doesn't make sense. However, most people I know do it. So I've tried to find ways to get them to stop that behavior. So if we're looking at behavior that are not going to help your training, I mean, the more inactive you are for a long period of time, my problem is not with sitting. My problem is how long are you sitting for without moving? And if you're sitting for 5 hours without moving, we have a problem. So I basically get them to use either apps or alarms or their phone, and I put them on a timer. I'm like, I don't care, every half an hour, your timer is going to go. And at that point, I just want them to get up and do something for 2 minutes. It could be anything. Go get water, go get coffee, go pee, stretch, and then sit back down for half an hour. But I tell them to do that all day, every day, because before at the office, they would always get moving. They just didn't notice it. They had to like go see a colleague or go for lunch or go to the pub or go get this or go coffee. Or they don't have to anymore. They're just home. So now they're home, and some of them just don't move for hours and hours and hours and hours. So that's never going to prepare you for anything. The only thing that tends to do is just strengthen your nervous system into thinking that whatever position you're in is clearly the one you should stay in. So yeah, you're very good at the whole sitting, and then you want to go for a run or you want to go do something else, and you're not primed for it. It's like, if you sat all day and you haven't moved at all. And then the problem as well is that we don't notice that when people say, oh, I try to sit upright. Yes, you can try. It's going to be quite difficult. Because I do believe we have a certain amount of muscle energy that we can have when we're sitting upright and we're in the correct position. And then everybody is going to start collapsing. But I see it more as a natural process. I think that's normal. I think I would do it too if I was at the desk all day. Eventually, gravity would just, I would slouch. My head would move forward. So I'm less inclined to want to correct that and more inclined to make them get off that position altogether and reset. So stand up, go for a walk, come back down. And usually they feel fine when they come down. Trying to make them sit upright while they're still sitting, that doesn't work for me. It's kind of that lasts for a minute, and then they just get tired. Like they get tired and they slash straight back down. So I try to get them out of that position. So the position for me is less of a problem, but I need to get them out of that position as often as possible. And if they have a standing desk that does both, I make them alternate between the two. I say, I want you to stand for half an hour, sit for half an hour, because some of them go the other way and suddenly they stand all day and then they come and see me and they've got lower back pain. I'm like, what happened? Say, yeah, I'm standing all day, feel great. Like, yeah, but you're still not moving. So it's like, what are you thinking? Like, no. So the same as I explained to them that if they were unwell and they were in bed for 3 days straight, they would get back problems just the same. I'm like, the problem is not that you're lying, sitting, standing. The problem is just not bloody moving. You need to start moving. So I make them on a timer and then I make them move. That's probably the thing I do the most. After that, for anybody that trains, all my runners, I make them warm up properly because a lot of them want to get out of the door and go for a run and then come and see me with like their knees are not all right, their hips. They've done no warm up whatsoever. There was no lunging, no squatting, no active mobility. And it's like, minus 25 outside. So yeah, so I get them to do that. Same with power lifters and CrossFitters. I probably just make sure that CrossFitters is harder because they do random stuff. So preparing for random is a bit difficult. And usually their boxes tend to be quite good at like band-aid work, activation drills. It'd be the same if you go to the gym. I would spend, if you're about to squat and you're going to be squatting heavy, I would spend some time on hips and core knees mobility, via thoracic spine. Same if you're about to bench, press, unless you're going just to do biceps and triceps, which is fine, I don't mind. I would want a good 15 minutes of basically getting you out of the sitting position into like a deep squat position. So, and sometimes that takes a bit of time. Just a nice warm-up drill, something that you do every single time you go to the gym, 10-15 minutes, and then you're just ready and you do your warm-up sets and then you do your work because you're not trying to spend your life there.
I think that's a big thing there though, just picking on what you said. You just said 10 to 15 minutes. You ask most people how long they warm up for and they're like 5 minutes, do a few exercises, and it's just a little bit of more of a consideration for what body part are you training, what has your day looked like to prepare you even for your warm-up. Like if you don't need to do much of a warm-up because you've been out walking all day or you've been very active around the house, cleaning, moving, etc., just be considerate of the state that you're going into the training session in, and if you're able to use that state or if you need to support the change in that state through movement, through breathing, and using your warm-up to sort of mimic the type of movements and muscle groups that you're going to be using in your training. Because we'll see people just randomly, what should I do for warm-up? I'll do a little bit of a few air squats, a few pigeon holds. I'm good to go, and it's a case of...
And then the bar.
Yeah, and it's like, is that enough?
I'll warm up doing the exercise. That's normally the one.
Yeah, and
which should be part of it, but it shouldn't be the whole of it.
Yeah, and I'm not one to recommend a lot of static stretching. I won't lie. So, before a session, I would do a lot of just active mobility drills. So, and that can be anything depending where your issues are and what you're trying to prepare yourself for. But just keep it moving. Like, yeah, I'm just really big on blood flow and just movement. So for me, whether you move throughout the day or you move, like, don't static hold positions. It's not going to prepare you for for much, I'm not, you're not going to get much out of statically stretching your hamstrings if you're about to deadlift. Like, you're trying to prime the body into doing the work, so you want it to be active. So at that point, single leg deadlift, airplanes, anything for the hip and the ankles and the knee to be ready to do the loads. Probably fire up your lats to make sure that the bar stays in the. So I've developed over a long time exactly the protocol I would want me to do before the training. But then, if a person comes and that's what they're preparing for, and they say before they bench, their shoulder hurts, for example, I'll definitely look at thoracic work. I'll be like, how much thoracic extension do you have? None. Well, we're going to have a problem. And then they sit all day, so the thoracic is like properly flexed position, and then they try and bench. And I'm like, we could sort out a little bit. So, and if you train, please, I would say, like, do some unilateral work. I cannot reinforce enough. I know it's extra work on top of training, and we love using barbells, but you've got to start using the body in different right to side, like right to left sides, like dumbbell, single leg, single arm. That's the best way I have to correct imbalances, because we're always going to have imbalances, and I'm not trying to make anyone symmetrical. A lot of people assume that because they have a stronger, bigger side, it's a bad thing. And I'm like, no, that's how you're, that's how you are. You've been writing with your right hand your entire life. Your right arm's always going to do the job. But when you're at the gym, you could try and actually do work separately, both sides, because a lot of the things I see in lifters and CrossFitters is that as soon as we are anchored to one piece of equipment, it's super easy for the main side to do 90% of the job, and then the other side is like slacking behind. But it doesn't matter, it's a barbell, so you stuck to it anyway. So I try to get them to do a lot of, like, all my runners have to do single-legged work. If you're a runner, you have to do single leg work and core work, and a lot of core work and stability. And that goes for all my power lifters, all my fitters, everybody.
That's it. Cecile has spoken.
Yeah.
Training programs. So just off the back of that, we've just been talking about kind of working within your recoverability, being aware of what your body needs, what it's telling you, and giving it what it needs as well. So we're going to sort of touch on sort of towards the end of the podcast for a few minutes, just with looking at sort of how you manage sort of living with lupus, the challenges it like puts onto you, how you mitigate that in your sort of the best way you can. But would you mind sort of just introducing what lupus is and what it looks like for you, because it is very different for very different people, isn't it?
Yeah. So lupus there's 5 types. Mine is SLE. It's one type of lupus, and basically it's my immunity attacks my body, especially my joint and my organs. So thankfully for me, just my joint. It hasn't really come around to the brain, the lungs, and the rest. But you never know. That might explain my short temper and my memory problems.
You're French, that's it.
Yeah, swamp tags in my blood. And so I've had it since I was 17. I can't remember exactly how, but I just remember getting in the shower and suddenly I couldn't close my hands and I couldn't bend my knees. I just remember calling my mom going, the hell is this? I can't bend my knees. It was no pain. I just could not close my fingers and I couldn't bend my knees, and that was that. And got a diagnostic in like a week. And my mom is a doctor, so it was very quick, and in France it's very efficient. Do blood test, put me on anti-inflammatories, and I've been managing it since. I don't take any drugs for it or anything. I think I've had it since I was 17, so it's going to be 20 years this year. So I've just learned how to manage it, and you don't have that many options. In a lot of autoimmune conditions, mine is what we call an hyperactive immune system. So I don't have a underactive immune system, which a lot of people assume that's what it is. So people were worried for me when COVID happened because they thought I would be vulnerable. I can only be vulnerable if I take steroids. So I have 2 options. Either I can manage myself, or you take steroids and then you have no immune system. So yeah, the options are not fantastic for autoimmune conditions, but I do believe it is management more than anything. So since I've just done a lot of reading and research, and I believe nutrition and stress management are probably the biggest one, and sleep. Also, I do believe I chose quite intense sport and job, because I always assumed that I think I just naturally wanted to tell myself that if I'm in pain, it would likely be because of my work or my training rather than my condition. So, for example, like today, my hand is killing me, but automatically my brain will think it's probably because I deadlifted yesterday. It's not going to automatically think it's the condition. So I try to not attach it too much to my symptoms, even though I'm aware how the symptoms work and how they get aggravated. So like chronic fatigue or stuff like this.
Yeah, it's like you creating this false world for your body to begin to believe, which is really useful, I'd imagine, for you as sort of a mental coping strategy, because it allows you to detach yourself away from something which could eat you up. It very much, it's lived, you can't get away from it, but you have another cause to kind of blame it on, which is, it's a really interesting way, I feel, of looking at it. And that's why I really wanted us to talk about it, because this is how you manage it, and it's sort of how it works for you. And you've created this. No one said to you, I think you should do this job because it will help you mentally.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's kind of like, and that's probably why I don't accept the whole PT thing. I think that's, but not just with me, literally with everybody. That's why patients come. As soon as I hear it in their voice, I will like stop it straight away, because I'm like, no, stop that. Like, no, there's no PT party with me. It's like, no, like, we can manage what we can manage and make the choices we can. And yeah, it's kind of, I'm aware of it, because unfortunately I will break into rushes when I get annoyed, or I'll wake up and I've slept 9 hours and it feels like I've slept 3. So caffeine to rescue, huge coffee person here. And
well, you're European, so that's normal.
Yeah, I love it. And it's like, I can't go into the sun because I'll burn. I have to wear headphones because the noise hurts my ear. When I like sirens, like police, I can't listen to it. I have to have like sound off. But it's like, you just adapt, right? Because then I go to Guy's Hospital and I see who is in the waiting room, and I'm like, well, I'm clearly the youngest one here. And I don't think I'll be ending up in a wheelchair anytime soon. So we're going to keep on doing what we can. And I do believe that physical exercise helps, because I've met a lot of people who have autoimmune condition, who've started especially weightlifting, weight training, and actually we seem to all feel better when we train. So, which is completely counterproductive, since this bloody condition attacks our joints and our bodies and our organs. But no, most of us are like, I don't train for, let's say, 3 weeks. My knees start to kill me. So I'm like, we might as well. I'd rather get DOMS from, heavy squatting than this. So we all do try and stay as
I think it's interesting what you're saying there, as in, it's like everything, it's about how you're framing it. So you've got two choices. Like, you've got this thing that you can't control, but what you can control is how you think about it. Because you're choosing to think, right, well, I'm going to make the most of it. I'm still going to train. I'm still going to live my life. I don't want any pity. Like, I'm just going to get on with it. You still lead a very fulfilling, active lifestyle. Whereas there's other people that get things kind of come their way and they're like, oh, woe is me. This always happens to me. Why is X, Y, Z? And they play the victim role. And when you're a victim, life will always be happening to you, because you're not taking ownership of it. And I've seen it happen a lot of times even within like coaching. I'm sure you've seen it yourself, Rachel, where somebody comes to you and they've got a little bit of that victim mindset, but then they work with someone like Cecile or like yourself that basically doesn't accept it and goes, okay, I get that. However, what can you do in this situation? And start teaching people to start teaching people to problem solve and to go, actually, there is things you can do. You're not powerless. And when they realize that and they take ownership and they go, holy shit, I can actually control these things, and their life completely changes. And it's nothing more than just going, just make a decision, take ownership, do something, stop feeling sorry for yourself. So I think it's even more amazing when somebody comes in and they've got a condition or an autoimmune condition or something like that, but they've still managed to overcome it and foster this mindset without anybody sitting them down and going, you need to think like this. It just kind of happened naturally. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting point.
I do really think that's one of Cecile's strong points, because she has lived experience of all this, and you've got a sort of a place to share from for someone else. And it's not the case of, right, you think you've got it bad, listen to what I've got to tell you. It's a case of, this is how I deal with it. This is a strategy I use. These are strategies other people can use, and it's something that will work for you, but you have to buy into it. And it is that sort of facilitatory role, as opposed to telling someone what to do. All you can do is advise and guide, and hopefully they'll come around, but it does come very much from sort of your prescription of what they should try. That you prevent so much from happening to you by playing an active role in managing your sleep, managing your nutrition, managing your caffeine intake when you want to. But sort of outside of that, it's you doing as much as you can, and if things happen, they happen. But you know you've done as much as you can to kind of offset that negative side of things that could come in.
Yeah.
I think that's sorry, carry on.
No. I think it is about being proactive about things. I think it's, life, shit will happen, and it could be anything. It could be medical, it could be injury, it could be family, it could be. So I think we are allowed to have a certain period of time where, it's going to be tough, and, things will be difficult. But then, I also believe that at some point in time, if you take it into your own hands, and you take responsibility, it's actually easier. I think people are scared of taking responsibility for their own well-being. But actually, once they realize that it is in their control to manage all of those things, including emotional stuff, then actually it's easier, but it's hard. So I think that's the problem. It's hard, but it makes life easier long-term. So it's trying to pass the hard point, the same as the first time you go training and you're in pain for 3 weeks, but it shouldn't stop you training. It's just, you have to know that it is difficult, but if you do the work, then it's more likely going to get easier as you move forward.
Perfect. I think that's a wonderful positive note to finish the podcast on. So Cecile, where can people find you? Have you got Instagram, Facebook, website, if they want to catch up with yourself and your work?
The main, I would have thought the main website will be for the work is the clinic, and it's a chiropractic clinic in Clapham Common. That's called Backspace. I would say my Instagram, but realistically my Instagram is a lot of training and a lot of cats, because I have slight problems with cats. So a lot of memes and a lot of cats on my Instagram. Brilliant. So, and training, just a lot of training. But if anybody's got any questions, they can contact me that way. It's no problem. People have got loads of different ways of reaching us. So any questions they can ask that way.
So the handle on Instagram is Cecile_sports therapy, and I will pop a link into the show notes as well, so to help you, we'll be able to find you. So it's been brilliant to have you on today, Cecile. I've really enjoyed this one. I think Rachel's going to be lining up some more guests for us well, so you won't be the only female guest that we've had on. Very enlightening.
Definitely set the bar.
You've definitely set the bar high. So it's been great to chat to you, and I've just followed you on Instagram as well. So
thank you for having me.
We'll see you again next week, Rachel, and lovely to have you on, Cecile. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Cecile.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.